Okay, so I'll be talking about the differences and the similarities of the Elizabethan era and nowadays ways of educating. First, I'll be talking about the differences. In the Elizabethan era, children of high and middle class had access to education. These were mainly boys. However, if certain girls were also upper class, then they could be accepted as well. Nowadays, we have to accept everyone because it's law that every child has to have some sort of education, whether it's being homeschooled or going to a public school. In the Elizabethan era, children had to wake up early in the morning and do their morning prayers. Children in the modern day, however, actually have to wake up pretty early and either catch a bus, walk, or get a lift to school. So I mentioned previously that girls could go to school if they were upper class. And yes, they could. But they would actually be taught how to obey the male in their future life. Where the boys were learning Latin, the girls would be learning about housewife duties. And sometimes they would also learn about dance and music. Turning back to the boys' education, in the third year of them being at grammar school, they would usually be learning about a lot of Latin, and they would practice by doing Latin to English and English to Latin translations. Nowadays we rarely learn Latin, but some old running schools might have a tradition of teaching Latin, but nowadays we currently teach well-spoken languages. Now at 14 years old, the boys could legally switch from secondary school to university in order to study what they want. But nowadays we currently have to stay in secondary school until we are 16 years old. Then we can either go into sixth form or make our way over to college. However, when we turn 18 at the end of doing our A-levels, we can legally apply to any university of our choice. In a normal Elizabethan era day, school would start at 6 o'clock and finish at 5 o'clock in summer. This was because the days were much longer because it was much brighter. And obviously it was much brighter throughout the day. They also got a 2-hour break for lunch. In winter, school started at 7 o'clock and finished at 4 o'clock because of the dark nights and dark mornings. They had 5 days at school and a half day on Thursday. They did this for around 40 to 44 weeks of the year. That's 2,000 hours. Imagine that. Also, because the boys were expected to learn fluent Latin, that if they were caught outside of the class speaking English, then they would get 50 cane whips to their behind. This was not uncommon at the time. You can obviously see a big difference between the routines at school. For us, school starts at 8 to 9 o'clock and finishes at 3 to 4 o'clock. We think that is tiring. We also get half-term and end-of-term breaks, as well as winter and the summer holidays. We're extremely lucky compared to what them boys went through. The boys would then be tested on the previous Sunday sermon on Monday. Then until Thursday, they would do the basic curriculum. On Friday, they would be tested and punished if they failed the examination. On Saturday, they would study arithmetic. In school nowadays, we have set timetables we stick to, and certain subjects we do. This is a big difference. Now let's do the similarities. Now I know what you're thinking, that there are more differences than similarities. Yes, you're correct, but technology has come so incredibly far over the past 400 years. We've got mobile phones, laptops, ballpoint pens, cars, supermarkets, electricity and washing machines. Although there are still very obvious similarities between the two eras, which I'll tell you now. First of all, and the most important, girls and boys were all taught about manners, how to speak properly, how to act properly. We are still taught this in our schools up to this day, now. This is a little thing, but it helps with our everyday lives and the way we will grow up to be in our future selves. Secondly, even though we don't have as many dramatic punishments anymore, we still have consequences for all our actions that we perform wrong. And we do this in order to learn easily. We still get detentions, still one-to-one talks with the teacher for our actions we do wrong. And I know that detention and talking to the teacher isn't as bad as being whipped. Well, yeah, but they're both consequences for our actions that we perform wrong. Next point is about handwriting. Now, handwriting in the Elizabethan era wasn't paid attention to too dramatically, same as now. The teachers in this school aren't as fussed with our handwriting as they are with our method of thinking and the way we process and the way we learn. This was exactly the same for the Elizabethan boys in their schools. They were more focused on getting to do the best and getting into Oxford and Cambridge than they were with the state of the boys' handwriting. My last and final point is that we had the same schools as they did in the Elizabethan era. We have nursery, they had petty schools. We have grammar schools, they had grammar schools. We have many universities with different curriculums, and so did they. The schools' systems throughout the hundreds of years between these two eras, which is actually quite interesting because they haven't changed the order of the ways we are taught or placed in different schools. Therefore, from an early era, we've already figured out a brilliant way of educating these children. We still haven't changed it to this day. In conclusion, the way we are taught now is a lot different and improved than 400 years ago in the Elizabethan era. This is mainly because of the technology and science and discoveries that we have figured out since then. However, there's some things that have kept the same for all these years, these 323 years, and could be called traditional.